Back once again with Erika Brown of the Cricket to talk all things Manchester by the Sea and Essex. How you doing, Erika?
Hey guys, how are you?
Great. Okay, the big story, of course, 52 million smackaroos for a new school.
Oh my God, I found that under a couch and a couch cushion. Came
Yeah.
up at 52.2 million dollars. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
It's what a
Yeah,
school goes for these days, though.
yeah,
Schools are
exactly.
pricey. You're right.
Well, the key I've learned after doing this story is how much do you get after the grants?
Mhm.
How much?
How much of the bill sticks to your ribs?
Yeah, right.
So in the case of Manchester, we're talking about the Manchester Memorial Elementary School, which the replacement that came online fully last week when kids went back to school was the new school that replaced one that was built in 1951. Yes, exactly, exactly.
How much did that school cost?
Well, well, at the time, that
Me
school was
too.
considered it was considered state of the art in 1951. And listen, everyone knows this story. The Memorial School was dilapidated and was actually a health hazard and a safety hazard by the time it was replaced. They didn't replace it until they absolutely had to. And they got a building committee together many years ago. The building committee was an all-star volunteer group of architects, real estate. We're talking real estate attorneys that were like on a partner at Ropes and Gray. You know what I mean? Like they weren't just little, they had all the big guns come out, project managers for big engineering firms, all this other stuff. That was the building committee that actually organized this. And as a result, that was one of the success factors. And also, by the way, also on the committee were two total veterans of regionalization, school committee, and the high school project that was almost 20 years ago was built. So that's Annie Cameron over in Essex,
Yep.
and then Sarah Creighton here in Manchester. So all of these guys were on the committee that was organizing and managing this thing. You couple that with the fact that Pam Bodwin was the superintendent, and then, it's just a really good sort of mix of people. And 4 years later, they overcame a lot of obstacles, and the school is amazing. We did a piece on design. How do you design a school when you don't know what the future is going to be with technology racing right along? I mean, how do you do a library if you don't know if there's going to be books in 5 years
Right.
or 2 years? So as a result, it's really flexible, a lot of light, security. The security story is super interesting. Just everything has been thought of. The team that did it, I cannot believe that the construction team that did it brought in all this steel and built this thing within a thickly settled residential village district, and they did it without a single complaint, basically. I mean, there was one teeny complaint, and that was it. It was sort of a really great story. And then, of course, the structure is built within 500 feet of the municipal well. So it's got a whole bunch of environmental things. The drinking, 40% of the town's drinking water is at the Lincoln Street well. That's 500 feet from the property. So you can imagine the gymnastics that had to be done from a design perspective, but they did it using technology. There's like this stormwater runoff system that is the size of a parking lot. And that's actually literally the case. Underneath the parking lot will be this kind of high-tech environmental storm capture system to kind of make it safe within the wetlands that it's in. So it's a really great story, and the kids benefit from it, and they all went back to school and everything was great. And there you have it.
Yeah, 77,000 square feet.
77,000 square feet. And everyone, by the way, I think I should mention this. A lot of people sort of scuttlebutt and say, oh, it's so big, it's so big. It's so much bigger than what was there before. Guess what? The footprint it's on is actually smaller. It's actually a smaller footprint, but it goes up 2 sizes. It just shows you the design. You can design your way through big challenges. So the footprint on the site, the impact on the site is actually better. And they actually designed the exterior to kind of mirror the high school, so it feels like a campus, even though it's across the street. And there's these really interesting stories. I would encourage people to look into it. The gymnasium opens up to the cafeteria, opens up to the outside, opens up to the front hub. So it's like this cafe gymatorium, they call it. And so you can close off areas, open up areas. You can have outdoor seating for lunch if you wanted to. And that was all before COVID.
Yeah,
It's
COVID.
It's
Yeah.
a smartly designed place, and it's really interesting. So next up is Essex. Essex is going to be, built in maybe about 7 years. So I think they should get started now.
Right. I'd like to hear just a little bit more about the security piece. What did they do there?
Well, security is something that people don't want to talk about a lot, and
Right.
because
Post Sandy Hook.
talk about it, it's a concerning thing to people. I used to do a lot of work for Logan Airport, for instance, and I had to do a lot of research. And one of the things we found with research about ambiance, they wanted to know about ambiance. Why is not pertinent. But one of the things we found in all the research we did is that a big display of security, state police in jackboots meeting you and yelling at you as soon as you drive up, that's not comforting to people, and it doesn't make them feel secure, and it doesn't impact security really. Isn't that interesting?
That's really interesting. Yeah.
So take that and apply it to the school with kids. Do you want metal detectors and all that? That's not security really. That's theater for security. That is a display of security. One of the things they did, I'll give you just a couple examples. They designed, it's all baked in. They designed a long walkway and they made a clear front entrance. So you think, is that secure? It is, because nobody has an excuse. A lot of times people who want to do something, do an attack, they pretend they don't know where the front entrance is. They try to go into yes. So big front entrance, you can see it, it's clear. You have no excuse to be anywhere other than there. And there's a long approach, because if you build time into the worst case scenario, you can impact things positively. So somebody has to walk a long way in a visible camera area before they even get to the front door. And all of the places that line that front area, they're all administrative offices, no classrooms.
So everyone can see.
Everybody can see. Once they get into the vestibule, that vestibule can be locked. It's a lockbox if they need to with the press of a button. And the other area of security, it has to do with visibility. There's windows everywhere. The sight lines are huge. Things that are bad happen when you can't see things. And again, sight lines build time in. So if somebody's doing something, and then yes, there's cameras everywhere too, but they're invisible. So it's secure, and yet it's all integrated, nuanced into the building and into the behavior of the building, which feels better for kids to me, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't want to teach kids that they're in a dangerous world, and yet this is an incredibly secure place using state-of-the-art everything, but you don't feel it and you don't see it.
That's fascinating.
Too much of an answer?
It's a great answer.
Keep your vape pen concealed.
Exactly.
All right, Erika, the other big story this week is about the community sailing program.
Yeah. And it's a big one this week because I think they're going to be having either this week or next week their 50th anniversary party. And I think it's going to be something of a gala or something like that. But 50 years of Manchester community sailing. What an interesting story. They started off with a group of parents that combined parents who were novices, who were not members of a yacht club and didn't sail, with my favorite. There were several groups that formed Manchester Sailing back in 1971. One of them was, and an important one, was the Frostbiters Club. And apparently they were the master mariners. That was the quote. And they had dire dows. They had some boats, and they lent their boats to the beginning of Manchester Sailing. And another important group was the Yacht Club. The Manchester Yacht Club also said, hey, listen, we'd love to have a youth sailing program and for our members, and we'll host you, we'll let you do this. So they literally have a patch of land on Harbor Street. That's all they have for winter storage. They have 2 docks off of the yacht club, and they have a borrowed closet-sized office at the yacht club. And this program has built, and by the way, the first year they sailed right through November. Remember, the Frostbiters.
Right, exactly.
They used to have to, honestly, the first year, these 9, 10, and 11-year-olds, they had to capsize. They had to learn to capsize in October.
Unbelievable.
So anyway, here's the program. It's at the time, it was one of the few examples of community sailing. If you had a connection to Manchester, you were in. So, and it was cheap and it was really good. Now it's one of the most successful programs around for sure. And we spoke to 2 of its most probably accomplished professional sailing or oriented professional sailing alums. One of them is Tony Leggett, who continues to be involved with the program and actually is the sailing coach for the high school. And then the other one is Robert Hopkins, who Robert Hopkins was in the very first class as a 9-year-old. He now lives in Spain, but he ended up with an extraordinary career in sailing, including he sailed for Yale, which is an incredible program. He then went on to sail for five, count them, America's Cup teams. 2 of those, he was the chief operating officer and on the head of the design team. And then he's also the navigator, the chief navigator, which is pretty much the most key position on the boat because it tells you where to go in the race. And then he also went on to become the youngest ever coach of the Olympic sailing team. And the year he did it, which was 1984, the team won more medals than any other country. So there you go. You want to know what his quote was in the article? It was, my parents weren't a member of the yacht club, and without Manchester Sailing, I had no way forward in sailing. I mean, it's just a great story. So he basically said his entire career was, hangs on Manchester Sailing. So the other interesting thing I would say is that Robert was saying that when he was younger and he was sort of coming up in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s in sailing, it was very unusual to run across anybody in the top levels of global sailing and racing that had come from a community program like he did. Most people came from a yacht club. And now that industry, sailing, is getting all its youth from community sailing. So it's flipped. And what's interesting is Manchester Sailing has always been a hybrid. It's always been community sailing with sponsorship from the yacht club. So it's had the best of both worlds.
Interesting.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. It was a great story.
Even a little sociology there with that flip. That's really interesting. It says a lot about our world.
There's a lot. I mean, I guess the big deal is that with yacht clubs now, they say that with their youth, they have so many options on things to do. It's not like kids are sitting around bored for the summer going, what do I do? And their parents the sailing program.
Right. And it's probably the cost has got to be a little bit, a bit of an obstacle. You have to have a family that has wealth or a certain amount of wealth and a nice boat probably, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And I guess the key to a great, from a sports perspective, from performance, is having a yacht club connection, community sailing, and a school program, a public school program. If you have all 3, you have all the success factors to really perform nationally. The truth is, though, what I love best about the MSA program is they've had all these examples of great performers, but they still focus on brand new sailors and the joy of discovering sailing. They haven't turned into this kind of performance engine.
Yeah, very cool.
Anyway.
Erika, what do we have coming up this month of September? Is there an important town meeting or anything like that on the docket?
We don't have a town meeting no, we do not have a town meeting this month. We're going to be formalizing everything that's going to be on the town meeting. Alan Wilson is being conservative about what's going to be on the docket for town meeting. So we're going to do recodification. That's definitely going to be on it. I know that the Affordable Housing Trust is going to have a non-binding referendum about the redevelopment of these properties that we've talked many times about. It's non-binding, so it's just sort of a show of support from the town. But that's pretty much it. In terms of other things that are going on in coming weeks, I'm going to be doing a piece next week or in the next 2 weeks, on the fact that the Conservation Commission in Manchester voted last week to formalize to our own bylaws in Manchester, their jurisdiction lands underwater, specifically the ocean. Now you say, why do they need to do that? It has to do with eelgrass and sort of the connection of trying to regulate things that are underwater as if they were wetlands. It's the ultimate wetland, lands under the ocean.
I think so, yeah.
And then the other thing that's happening in the next 2 weeks is going to be the cell phone tower in North Tower Corp over in Essex. That's kind of making its way through the system as well. And it's going to come to a head in the next 2 weeks, I think.
Gotcha. All right, we'll be looking forward to that, Erika. Thanks again, as always, folks. Get the cricket. I do.
You're the best. I love it. Thanks.
Bye.
This episode of Cape Ann Today is brought to you by Bank Gloucester. Start here, get there.